Hello friends, welcome back to my channel again. This is the most requested video on my channel for the past 3 months, I think, since I started the wrapped pages challenge in my channel. If you are new here and you don't know what the wrapped pages challenge is, it's basically a challenge I created for myself, and I wrapped all my physical TBR and I just numbered them and I put it in the shelf, and I created a bowl of lot of random chits in them, and every week I pick up one number from them and I just read whatever it comes. So I have been reading for quite a couple of months now, and I have been unable to post the reviews of it. So here in this video we are going to see the reviews of the first 10 books that I read in this wrapped pages challenge, and I'm super excited and I'm very happy to be back making long videos. It feels like home. So without further ado, let's get started. The first book that I read in this challenge is The Wild Bodies by Evelyn Waugh. And this is a book that is written during 1930s, and it is set in a specific time period of the London post First World War time. And there were a group of people called bright young people or bright young creatures or something, and they are all these elite people who just do random and insane stuffs like partying, costume parties, and a lot of illicit drugs and all those things. Apparently that has created the attention of lot of journalists, and lot of people has written about those events. And one of such satirical take on that bright young people is this Wild Bodies, and this follows a guy called Adam, and he is just coming from France to London, and he has just finished a manuscript of a book, but that has been destroyed by the customs officer, quoting it as obscene. So his he was very dependent on the publishing of that book, but it gets destroyed, so he cannot marry the love of his life. So he calls her and tells her that I cannot marry you because I just lost the manuscript and I'm bankrupt and all those things. But in the middle of that book, he gets $1,000 worth in a gambling, and then he gambles it again. This is kind of satire of all the absurd things that are people facing in between two great wars. This was good, this was very nice, but I didn't get the references while I was reading this, because this is set in a very specific time. And it had lot of back references to the actual things that happened during that time, which I'm not very well versed with. But as a concept, and as just an outside reader who's reading it after 70 years now, and I think that this was a very decent read, and I do feel like how it would have affected the people during that time, to call out the absurdity of that modern things that bright young people were doing. So I enjoyed this, but not my best book of the year. I gave it 3 stars, and look how beautiful this cover is. Isn't this gorgeous? And it's very short. So as a first book, it was not such a letdown. I enjoyed it. The second book that I got is Puddin by Julie Murphy, and this is a sequel to a series that she's writing. The first book was called The Dumpling, which I read I think 2 or 3 years before, and this is a YA contemporary book. And the first one was made into a movie also, featuring Jennifer Aniston. I watched that movie. It is a decent one. I enjoyed it. So finally I picked this one up. I liked this book better than Dumpling, to be honest. This follows 2 girls, Callie and Millie. One girl is fat and one girl is thin, and fat girl thinks that the thin girl's life is very easy, but it's not the case when she gets to know her, gets to talk to her, and it is not all about the beauty when it comes to living the life. That is what these 2 young kids realize as the story prolongs, and they too have their back. That is a beautiful relationship. Up till now, most of the kids are like separated, like thin, young, and full of life people, and those who are considered as outcasts just because they don't fit the expectations. But when they break that barrier and become friends, everything is so wonderful. How they deal with life, how they make mistakes, and how they come out from it is what this book is about. And this was very good in the sense that many of the YA books that I have read over the past were a little bit toxic, but this was not toxic at all, because this gave the right messages to the kids. If I had a daughter of this age, I would definitely ask her to read it. It is really good. So that is my review of it. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. just because it is not relatable to me, but I enjoyed the story nonetheless. The next book that I read was a very serious one, and it is the first book that I'm reading from this author, who is Khalid Hosseini, and the book is And the Mountains Echoed. So this book is kind of having an insane timeline, and it starts in Afghanistan, 1952, but it is going till date, but it goes back and forth and something like that. And it's basically about a lot of people, but mainly it is about two people, a brother and a sister, who are being separated during their childhood. Her father just sells her daughter because he is in a poverty, and hoping that her daughter would have a better life than what he can give her. It is just heartbreaking from the first paragraph of this book. It was so hard to read how they got separated and what kind of life she was living, and it was very hard. And meanwhile, there is a background of the story of war that is the author is telling us, the repercussions of the war, what happens to the normal people. The Afghanistan war was in a grand scale. Soviet came, Americans came, then Taliban came. It's all so much to take for a normal common people, and how it affected these characters is what this book is about. And there are a lot of other characters too, lot of other and there are other stories in this also, where there are rescue facilities of hospitals which Americans built there, and trying to give them a second chance and trying to give them medical aid and all. Those storylines were also really good. This is very raw. You will just get to see a lot of humanity, lot of evilness of people during wartime. Everything you will see, and I liked it, but somehow I did not feel that this is the best book that he's ever written. And people kept saying me that his earlier works are really better. The Thousand Splendid Suns and Kite Runner are better than this. I'm hoping to get to that really very soon. So I think that this wouldn't stick with me for a long time to come, but I will always remember the story that I read it. But this kid's relationship with her brother was really heart-touching, and I loved it for that. By the way, I gave it 3.5 stars. Now comes the actual scene, the first 5-star of the year, and I'm smiling because this made me feel everything. I'm so in love with this book, and I can't wait to read the sequel of this book. The book that I'm talking about is Jade City, and it's by Fonda. And if you remember from my previous videos, this was suggested by so many of you. I hauled this book during Amazon book haul, and before that, a lot of people asked me to read this, but I finally got to it during this challenge. And guys, you were really, really right. This is an awesome book. The character development in this book is top notch. So basically, the story follows two rivalry gangs, and in this world, they have this magic that is stored in jade, and people own jade, and not everyone can wear jade. Only certain people of certain clan can wear jade, and in that clan there are two rivalry gangs, and the gang war is what it is about. I expected it to be very boring and plain when I heard this synopsis. So it's going to be violent, and it's only going to be a lot of actions. There's no story to be going on. That is what I expected, but boy, I was wrong. The characters are really something. They will get to you immediately when you start reading it. You will start to care for these characters so soon, and I hope that this series gets better and better, because I totally intend to continue reading this. There are 2 more books in it. This is a trilogy, and if you are looking for a fantasy that you want to get yourself lost into, I highly, highly, highly recommend you to check this out. Jade City by Fonda. Do check it out. 5 stars. The next book is a prequel to one of my very favorite books called We Were Liars by E.lockhart, and this is Family of Liars, and this is a prequel that happens before their time, like 40 years. The lead character's mother is the lead character in this book. So this book was actually a decent read, but I couldn't enjoy that for a very specific reason, because that was the time when the Epstein files were released, and I had aversion to rich people during that time, and this is a rich people drama book. I just couldn't stand the absurdity of the rich people's life and the effect they have on other people's life, and I was totally devastated by the Epstein files, so I just couldn't enjoy this. But nonetheless, this is a decent read if you're not affected by those things. And this is decent, but it is not better than the Beware Liars. I would prefer the first book over this. This is okay-ish read. I hope you can enjoy it. If you want to have a lighter time and have fun with reading, maybe pick this up, but it was not the book for me during that time, so I gave it 2.5 stars. I don't know if the universe is telling me and giving me books. I don't know at this point, because I was devastated by reading The Family of Liars and I lost the hope in humanity. And then I got this book that's called The Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm by Kate Douglas Wiggins. And this book, if you are a Anne of Green Gables fan, you would love this. That is the exact feeling that it gave. This is about Rebecca. She is one of the many siblings of a family whose father is dead. So her mother is really struggling to bring all these kids together. So they are sending them off to their aunt's home. They are wealthy, but they're unmarried. Two aunts are there. So they are sent to that two aunts to live with them. And she is doing the schooling there, and she has to earn her place there because those aunts are hateful. Just like Marilla of Anne of Green Gables, they don't get along in the initial phases, but eventually they will get along. So as the story proceeds, you will learn that Kate is getting her place in that aunt's home, and she's making friends, and she's going to school, and she's having troubles at school, just like Anne. Everything was really, really very good. You will just feel wholesome after reading it, and I loved it so much. I gave it 4 stars. The next book is, I think, the 6th book. Yeah, the next book is the 6th book that I read, and it is the most gorgeous book that I own, and that is The Binding by Bridget Collins. Before the review, just look at this book. Just look at it. How gorgeous this is. Just see. Isn't this eye-blindingly beautiful? And the story is even more beautiful. You know, this concept actually blew my mind. In this story, there are people called binders who can bind your memories into books, and you will forget that memory if it is binded. So you can take off the painful and regretful memories of yours and just bind them and simply forget about it. But this was initially created to ease down the people's pain, but it falls in wrong hands and people tend to misuse it, and they steal people's memory just to make them forget things and do bad things to them. It's kind of that. And there is also a beautiful love story in it, which is a LGBTQ love story that I loved reading about. It was very decent, and it was portrayed in a very poetic and lyrical way. The writing in this book was so good that I immediately immersed in it. I read this book under 48 hours, I think. I just could not stop reading it. I loved it so much. You know, the lead character here is also a binder, but he does not know. He goes to learn that skill in a home where an older woman who's a binder is teaching him the things, and he slowly recovers his own memory, which was subdued by others. And when he learns about that memory, the game changes. It was so good, and it was fast paced. It was so lyrical. It's fantastical, and it's comforting in a way, and I absolutely loved. This is such a dark and atmospheric book for fall season, and I would highly recommend you to check this out during that time, and I gave it 4.5 stars. The next book is also from an author who's my all-time favorite. I have read a number of books from that author who has already kept me hooked up in all her books. That is Taylor Jenkins Reid, and the book is Forever Interrupted. This book is from her backlist title before she got really famous with the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and such. She used to basically write romance before she wrote all other stuffs. I don't usually read romance, but this is not only romance, but it is basically grief of losing someone you loved. So as the title says, it's forever interrupted. The girl loses her husband within 10 days of the marriage, and how she recovers from that is what this book is about. So this goes in a hopping timeline. You know, at the first chapter, the husband dies, and in the second chapter, they go to the flashback where they met, and it's like forward and backward and forward and backward, and it's really actually an interesting take on how this is done. But since I knew what was the ending and how it's going to end, I did not enjoy it so much as I enjoyed all her other books. But still, I gave it a 3 stars, and this book was really a very good book on grief. It speaks to you if you are going through something like that, and I hope that anyone who's going through grief can have a little comfort. And also read the trigger warnings if you are a little bit delicate. But nonetheless, this is a sensible novel on grief and love and hope. So 3.5 stars. There are only 2 more books to talk to you about. The 9th book, I have no idea how to explain this book. I read this book and I still don't know how to explain this book. And that book is The House of Leaves by, oh my god, this is heavy. House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski. And so this book is about a house that is haunted. It's not haunted as in a traditional hauntedness, like a spirit is living in there. It's not like that. The house itself is haunted. The house is bigger inside and smaller outside, like a labyrinth kind of thing. A lot of new hallways open up every night and new rooms are there, and it creates sounds, and it is like the house itself is possessed and the house itself has a mind on its own. And this book is about how those family who's living in this house is losing their mind living in here. And there is a documentary that family has created and documenting their experience while they were living in that house. And that documentary is being studied by 2 people outside. One people is dead after studying that documentary and trying to figure out what was happening, and he has created a notes on that documentary. So the third person is reading the notes of the second narrator. So basically there are 3 narrators: 1, the family owners who are living in that house, and 2, the person who was writing the notes based on the documentary that the first narrator has created, and 3rd, this person is reading the second narrator's notes and trying to figure out what. And all 3 people are losing their minds while reading this book, just like us, because this is dreadfully dragging. And I don't know, a lot of people said that this is very interesting, and how slowly you lose your mind while reading this. But I lost my mind just because how slow this moves and how it never got to the point. I have seen a lot of people who are fans for this book, but I'm not one of them, unfortunately. I gave it 2 stars because I was frustrated with the kind of narration that's going on. 1 was not enough. You have to deal with 3 narrators and everyone is switching their narrative styles. And look at this. The book's format is also very, very absurd. See, these are all a part of a story. And I was like, oh my god, this feels like a thesis that I had to read during my college, and I did not care for it. I'm sorry if you were expecting a positive review of this book from me. I'm not that person. Unfortunately, I gave it 2 stars and I do not recommend it. But if you are interested in checking out weird books and horror books, you can check this. But irrespective of my opinion, this is still considered as a cult classic in horror books. So do what you do. The 10th book that I read is Tea Time for the Traditionally Built, and this is by Alexander McCall Smith. So I bought this book just for the aesthetics of this book. I had no idea what this book is about. I thought this is looking nice and it's going to be a cozy mystery story. And it said that latest from the #1 ladies detective agency. So I just went for it. I had no idea. And after I read this book, I learned that there are 14 or 15 books in this. And this story is based on a middle-aged African lady. This is happening in Botswana, and the lady's name is Ramotswe. And the lady's name is Ramotswe. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right because it's an African name. So it's about her and her agency. She is the owner of that detective agency. And if you are looking for something fast-paced and to solve a mystery, do not go for this book. This is like 5% of the detective mystery portion, and 95% it is about the detective's own personal life and her musings of life and her day-to-day happenings. It was not very interesting, but it was like a cozy, laid-back, and it's kind of a vibe to go for, not plot-driven or character-driven or anything. So this, I suggest that if you are a fan of this series, if you're a fan of this laid back stories, it is fine, but I do not see myself going and reaching out for these kind of books in the future, and I do not recommend this to you. But nonetheless, I had pretty decent time, and this is 3 stars. So that is pretty much it, guys. These are the first 10 books that I read in the Wrapped Pages challenge, and the challenge is going on so good. I'm making super progress in all these things, and I'm very much proud of myself to knocking down the physical TBR. So do let me know what are the books that you're currently reading, and have you read all these books, any of these books? And if your reviews are opposite of mine, then do let me know in the comments. I would love to know. I would love to know your perspective, and I'd love to chat with you guys. And until I see you again in the very next video with a bookish content, this is Sushmita signing off. Keep reading. Bye bye.